Hello students, welcome to Read Aloud. Today we are going to enjoy another biography about Johnny Appleseed. And remember, a biography is a book about someone's life. Here we go. So, on the front of this biography, I see Johnny Appleseed, and I see his clothes have gotten kind of worn out. There he is with a cooking pot on his head. We've read about that before. And I see on the edges some decoration of apple trees, kind of branches. And this is called The True Tale of Johnny Appleseed. And on the back, there's kind of a close-up of an apple with a few bites taken out of it. Okay, on the title page, I see again The True Tale of Johnny Appleseed and the border. So this part of an illustration on a title page or sometimes on other pages of the book is called the border. And it's always good to take a close look at the border to get some more clues. So I see beautiful apples in the border. This is by Margaret Hodges, illustrated by Kimberly, Bulcken, Root, Holiday House Publishers. Oh, and here's another kind of an edge instead of a border. And look, there's a book. I wonder if book is an important detail. And there's Johnny Appleseed walking again. Oh, wow. So there's a picture of a baby hanging in a tree. We call that a hammock, hanging in a tree. And it looks like maybe that's his mom and dad are working in the apple trees. And there's the little baby reaching up to the apple. Johnny Chapman was born in Leominster, Massachusetts in 1774. When he was a baby, his mother made him a little hammock and hung it on the bough, that's the branch, of an apple tree. He could hear his mother singing as she helped his father harvest their crop of apples. Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. The apple trees. The cradle will rock the apple trees. Every spring, the blossoms were like white clouds. Every autumn, as Johnny grew up, he helped his parents pick the ripe fruit, tart and sweet and juicy. And there are the apple blossoms like clouds, like white puffy clouds. Okay. And here, if I sneak peek this, I can see him inside a house. And then outside the house, it looks like he's thinking really hard about something, kind of on his knees. Let's read. In Johnny's mind, an idea grew and grew. When he was 23 years old, he said goodbye to home and family and started westward. Ahead was a wilderness, and Johnny's dream was to plant apple trees there. He carried with him only a stew pot, a hatchet, a flint and steel for making fire, a bag of cornmeal, and a sack of apple seeds. A Bible was buttoned under his coat. So a hatchet is like an axe. That's for clearing. They have to cut down trees to order to plant new trees. Oh, and there he is planting. Oh, you know what? Let me go back. I should have looked more carefully. There we can see him setting off, and here giving you a chance to see that illustration better. Those who saw him said that he put his stew pot on his head for a hat. He gave away his clothes to anyone who needed a coat or trousers or shoes. Most of the time he wore no shoes. One man said that he saw Johnny breaking the ice in a creek with a bare foot. That would have been really cold. All along his path he planted apple seeds. If he was invited to spend the night in a cabin, he would not take a bed, but slept on the floor. He would not eat until he was sure that the children in the family were full. He loved honey, but would never take it from a bee tree until he saw that the bees had enough honey to keep themselves alive during the winter. A strange man indeed. So there he is planting a seed. Here he is breaking the ice in a creek with his foot. And there he is taking some honey. Ooh, there he is traveling in a canoe on the river. He found fewer and fewer little settlements as he traveled westward, following creeks and rivers by canoe most of the way. Oh, this looks cold. Maybe it's winter now? He had to cross the wild Allegheny Mountains on foot, and a furious winter snowstorm caught him by surprise. Up to his knees in snow, he wrapped his feet in pieces of cloth torn from his coat. Then he wove long, thin beech tree branches into snowshoes. With straps made of bark, he fastened his snowshoes to his feet and loped along over the top of the deep snow. So these are the snowshoes he made. And a snowshoe, if you use it kind of on your feet, it spreads your weight out over a bigger area so you don't sink into the snow. You can still walk on top of the snow. As time went by, Johnny walked so long and so far that his feet grew almost as tough as animal paws. In other ways, too, he came to be like an animal. He could curl up to sleep under a bush or in the hollow of a tree. Once, when he had planned to spend the night in a fallen tree, he found a mother bear already there, asleep with her cubs. Johnny backed out and moved on. That bear family has more right to the tree than I do, he said. So there he found the mother bear with her cubs, and he decided to sleep somewhere else. He would not even hurt a fly if he could help it. One of his sayings was, "Each creature is only acting according to its nature." Some people thought he was crazy. They laughed when they saw him coming with his ragged coat, his bare feet, and his stew-pot hat on his head, but children loved him. He would bring them simple gifts, a bit of calico, that's pretty cloth, to make a doll dress, or a skipping rope. The children would run to him shouting, "Here comes Johnny Appleseed, Johnny Appleseed." It was the children who first gave him his famous name. So there the children are running to him, and there he is sitting with them. As he traveled west or came back east to tend his young trees, Johnny brought news to the settlers. It might be good or bad news about the Indians. The Indians never harmed Johnny Appleseed. They saw that he was unlike other white men on the frontier. He was wise, and ready to help anyone in need. The Indians listened to him as he tried to understand and speak their language. So here he is visiting with some Indians or Native Americans. Often, Johnny would take a book apart and leave sections in cabins along the way, picking them up on his next visit. Oh, because he really liked books and reading. They were a traveling library in the wilderness. With money from the sale of apple trees, Johnny bought more books as the old ones wore out. He gave trees to people who were too poor to pay, but Johnny himself never seemed to feel poor. So that's interesting. He would take books. Books were very expensive back then, a little different than now. And he would take them apart and leave parts of them in different places so that he would always have something to read when he came to that home where they had some parts of a book he had left maybe. Planting, always planting. Slowly he moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio, often paddling along streams that had never been heard of back east. The wide Allegheny, Little Broken Straw Creek, the Muskingum, the Maumee, Lickin' River, and Owl Creek. Now that he was in what the maps called Indian land, only a few roads and Indian trails connected the white man's villages. But settlers were coming, whole families traveling by covered wagon, many carrying bags of apple seeds to plant orchards. Johnny's idea was spreading. So an orchard is a group of fruit trees. As he went farther and farther on into the wilderness, he kept ahead of the newcomers. In 5 or 6 years, when they picked a place for a village, Johnny's apple trees were waiting for them and made the wilderness seem more like a home. So there he is planting, and there they are in their covered wagons. I got to stop and think. So the idea is he's going ahead into the wilderness and planting the trees because it takes a few years for the trees to grow up and bear apples, right? So by the time the settlers get there, hopefully there will be some apple trees for them. In early March 1845, Johnny had got as far west as Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was staying with the family of an old friend when he heard that some cattle had broken into one of his new orchards 15 miles away. So that some cows got into his new trees. The weather was cold and wet, but he set off at once and never stopped to rest on the long walk. Cloudy and snow showers, an Indiana farmer wrote in his diary that day about the weather. The next day, the weather report was snow showers all day. When Johnny got back to his friend's house, they put him to bed with a high fever. During the March snows, Johnny Appleseed died, and his body returned to the earth he had loved. By early April, winter was past. The weather report read, "In the night, thunder showers, then fair, first apple blossoms." Oh, so it was so cold, and when he went to check on his trees, and he got sick, and he got so sick that he died. Johnny's work was done. He had made the wilderness bloom. Ever since, clouds of white apple blossoms have filled the Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana river valleys, and in the fall, children growing up where there had been only wilderness have had apples. Apple butter for their bread, apple sauce, apple pies, apple cider. All through the winter, they can reach into a barrel and pull out an apple to munch. Oh, beautiful apples. Johnny's apple trees lived on and on. Orchard after orchard, they spread along the river valleys. Some say that every apple tree you see in the Middle West comes from a Johnny Appleseed tree. Johnny himself was not forgotten. The children to whom he had told stories about his adventures passed the stories on to their own children. And the Indians remembered him too. They said he was our medicine man. So a medicine man is like a healer, like a doctor, someone who heals people when they don't feel well. And farm folks will tell you that when the apple trees make a cloud of white in the springtime, you may still catch a glimpse of something or someone moving among the branches at the far end of your orchard. It may be the spirit of Johnny Appleseed come down from heaven to tend his trees. Okay, and here's some more detailed information about Johnny Appleseed. So when I finish the book, I got to do something. The first thing I want to do is go back to this part here where it talked about some things that Johnny did. We know he planted apple trees, but this is talking more about how he was putting others first, right? So it said that if he was invited to spend the night in a cabin, he would sleep on the floor, right? He wanted to make sure he didn't take a bed from someone else, even though he was a guest. It said he would not eat until he was sure the children in the family had been fed first. And he loved honey, but he wouldn't even take honey until he was sure the bees had enough honey. Oh, and there was that other example where there was a mother, he needed a place to sleep, but he found a mother and her bear cubs, right? And so he was always thinking of others first. And that's a great quality in being a good citizen, thinking of others, right? And that's something I like about Johnny Appleseed. So I hope you've been keeping up with all our new information and wonderful facts and stories about Johnny Appleseed. And we'll be sticking with this over the next few days. Be sure to wash your hands, cover your coughs and sneezes, do some reading, do some writing, help your family around the house, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.